process automation systems that don't just follow rules to carry out routine, repetitive tasks, but also adapt to changing circumstances, proactively identify and resolve issues, and even optimize their own performance. That's the power of agentic process automation. Now, agentic automation represents the next leap in automation technology, combining traditional robotic process automation and advanced artificial intelligence capabilities. Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Analytics Insight podcast. And I'm your host, Priya Dayalani. And today we are diving into a topic that's at the cutting edge of artificial intelligence, that is agentic AI. If you have been following the AI space, you have probably noticed how fast things are evolving from predictive analytics to generative AI and now to agentic systems that can act, decide, and even collaborate with humans in entirely new ways. And of course, agentic AI is catalyzing a shift from capital intensive digital transformation projects to operating models that are built around assured outcomes. It enables systems to take initiative, make goal based decisions in real time, collaborate with humans in new ways, and help us make more informed decisions. So let's welcome Gautam Singh, head at WNS Analytics, Data, and AI, to talk more about it. Hi, Gautam, how are you doing?
I'm well, thanks. Good to meet you, Priya.
Glad to meet you too, Gautam, and it's a pleasure to have you with us on a podcast today. And of course, agentic AI is kind of the new buzzword that everybody is talking about. And of course, we are going to dive deeper so that we can gain more insights at your end. So let's start, by talking about WNS. I mean, I'm sure our listeners understand and know more about WNS, but if you could help us understand its specialization, anything different, or any insight that you would like to share with our listeners, it would be great.
Sure, guys. Priya, first of all, WNS is a business transformation and services company which started out as an offshoot from British Airways center in India many, many years ago. It then spun off and became a separate company in its own right. And over the last 20 years has transformed from what it used to do for British Airways to a global transformation business that helps large corporates around the world in looking at business processes, transforming them through the services that WNS provides. And in particular, I guess over the recent years, with the adoption of Gen AI and Agentic AI, we have come to the leading edge when it comes to business transformation, leveraging these new technologies. Just to give you a brief size and scale, WNS has 60,000 employees around the world, based out of 65 centers globally, over 700 clients that we serve on this basis. And I represent the business unit that focuses on analytics, data, and AI. I can jump a little bit more into what WNS Analytics specifically does, because that's the relevant bit here.
Sure.
But it's important that we underlay or overlay WNS's history. So WNS, being a business transformation company, it's these business processes that are being reimagined through the power of analytics, data, and AI. And it's this reimagined business processes that places WNS in a core lead position, because they truly understand domain and business process. And that's what we are enabling transformation on.
Great. Thank you for sharing that, Gautam. And it's always interesting to hear how, a particular company is creating an impact in a particular industry. And I really think this gives our listeners a clear picture of the value that WNS is bringing and also the vision and mission of the company. Now, building on that, I would also, love to dive a little deeper into your personal journey and role within the company. You have spent 20 years establishing and growing the Smart Cube, a research and analytics leader before it was acquired by WNS. So we would like to know more about you, Gautam. How has your journey been till date? What is your role and contribution towards the company? And what are certain tasks or, particular aspects that you think would contribute to the future of data and analytics at WNS?
Sure, Priya. So let me take one step further back. So I'm an engineer, grew up in India, ended up in the US, and then went to business school, and then spent 10 years with a blue chip management consulting firm called A.T. Kearney, mainly in the US and in Europe. And as I spent 10 years in consulting, I got exposure to really what's going on within the Fortune 500 or equivalent firms around the world. And that prompted me or gave me the idea and the confidence to start my own research and analytics business, because I saw the opportunity for analytics in particular to make a big difference in terms of how and what big companies were doing. So I built that over 20 years, and I'll come back a little bit more on what that means for WNS. But then I got acquired by WNS, and I was attracted to WNS for one simple reason. WNS truly understands business process and were very deep in the domains that they were working in the sectors that they were working in. And my analytics company and the work that I was doing, the future of that is to embed and infuse into the business process rather than be separate from it. And that was the future that I wanted to sort of take advantage of. And therefore, I joined, or we got acquired by WNS. And post a year and a half of integrating my business with WNS's organic analytics business, because they obviously had their own analytics capability already set up and scaled up over the last 15 years, I integrated my business with theirs. And now I run the combined entity, which was much, much larger than what I was managing as a smart cube. The excitement for me is that this gives me a much bigger foundation and scale to really make a bigger difference. And that's what WNS's strategy and vision is, really to embed data analytics and technology into all of the business processes that they are transforming with their clients. The way we do this is through a concept called productized services. So if you look at what we do, or what we used to historically do as WNS in terms of outsourcing business processes, that is the old way of thinking about it, where you move an army of people who are currently doing something in the US and move them to India, and we would basically do them on a cheaper basis because of labor cost arbitrage. That is not what WNS does today. That's not what the future is. What we do today is we look at the business processes at our clients, we reimagine them, taking advantage of our understanding of business process, the domain richness, using technology as an enabler, and infusing or integrating data and analytics into every part of that process to have reimagined it. That reimagined process is what we then take over and deliver as an ongoing service. And that's what we call a productized service, in the sense that the service is turbocharged with the underlying productized aspect of it, which basically includes aspects of agentic AI, Gen AI, or even old-fashioned analytics, as the case may be. And this is all developed around technology platforms so that the user interface and the user experience for those who are using or managing the process is made both more efficient and more effective. So let me pause there and see if that answers your question, or if you want me to go deeper.
Definitely, no, it definitely answers the question. And, thank you for sharing that, Gautam. We're always, I mean, we tend to ask this question to each of our guests on a podcast, and it's so inspiring to hear, different roles, how C-level executives like you have gone beyond day-to-day responsibility and contribute to shaping the company's vision and growth. And of course, it gives our listeners a clear picture of the impact your leadership can have, and but also on the people and innovation happening around us. Now let's dive a little bit deeper. I think when we talk about agentic AI, I think it is not just about using prompts or simple chatbots. In the current era of AI, with the availability of LLMs and more recently, large reasoning models, AI agents have taken on wider implications and applications. Unlike traditional software that executes predefined instructions, agentic systems make adaptive, autonomous decisions grounded in reasoning. So they are not limited to being software entities that act to fulfill a specified goal. Now, the key difference between agentic AI and earlier solution is their ability for adaptive, autonomous decision making on top of basic reasoning and autonomy, rather than strictly rule based or human directed actions typically of pre AI agents. Now, when we talk about the transformative potential of agentic AI, which industries or use cases specifically in India do you believe will see the most impact in the near term?
Sure. So, Priya, firstly, I think you described the impact of agentic AI and the difference between old-fashioned automation, which frankly had its uses and still does. But agentic AI is probably more useful in more complex situations rather than the basic stuff, which can still be automated using traditional methods. So, to answer your question, I actually think that agentic AI spans across most domains. In fact, what we are seeing and I'm seeing is that it's more down to the organization's willingness, sponsorship, and senior level mindset and adapt to agentic AI systems that's driving adoption. Because I really do think that agentic AI impacts almost every industry and frankly almost every function within those industries. Having said that, there are certain industries and certain use cases where this is, let me put it this way, has a higher priority because of its potential than in others. So insurance is a big amongst the top of the list. The other industry I would say is research heavy industries, where a lot of qualitative research needs to be done, for example, in the legal space or in the investment research space, or for example, in life sciences, where a lot of research is done in drug development and drug management. I can bring in healthcare and the entire backbone of healthcare and in terms of patient diagnostics and hospital care. Recruitment, executive search is another area where we do a lot of work where agentic systems are and will make a big difference, etc. I can go on. I do come back to say that in these industries, it's the winners and losers are being decided more by senior management proactiveness in saying, okay, we want to take advantage of these new technologies versus we want to wait and see.
Definitely. And I think, when you share these use cases and industries, I think it clearly defines that, agentic AI is not just a buzzword. I think we are going to see some very real and practical applications across sectors. And, I think, and if you talk about India specifically, I think these use cases tie back to India's larger digital transformation stories, where innovation will meet scale and impact. And, as we dive deeper, I'm going to talk about more about the opportunities or some of the challenges that we might face again in terms of agentic AI. Now, according to, Accenture's AI-driven economic growth in India report, intelligent machines and humans working together are expected to raise India's annual growth rate by 1.3 percentage points by 2035. Now, this translates to an additional $957 billion or 15% of the gross value added to India's economy. Of course, I mean, these stats sound, pretty overwhelming. However, the skill gap remains a significant barrier. Now, according to another report by IBM, which is like an AI-driven world report, 40% of the workforce needs to reskill to keep pace with AI adoption over the next 3 years. Now, considering this situation, organizations must devise reskilling plan to equip their workforce to harness the potential benefits of AI and use new age technologies effectively. So I think from all of this, we have definitely been able to gauge that reskilling and upskilling both are constant challenges. What specific skills do you think will become non-negotiable for India's workforce to thrive alongside agentic AI systems?
Okay, so first of all, I'm very optimistic what this technology does, not just for India, but at a global level. And I grew up in India, I'm very proud of the education system that we have in India, which creates an army of technically qualified people, or at least technically people with the right potential, given the right training and exposure. So if you look at India, it has the youngest workforce. It generates more people out of university and graduates than anywhere else in the world, perhaps maybe outside of China. And hence, we have the right raw material to take advantage of this technology rather than be in any way worried about it. Secondly, the IT services and the outsourcing industry is driven out of India. We are the ones who actually have the opportunity to look at what we are doing and see how agentic AI, Gen AI, and all of these new technologies can be adopted and leveraged for the work we do. So we are in pole position is the first point I make. If you look at the big companies in the space, including WNS and TCS and Infosys and all the others out there in the wider IT services space, there's already a lot of investment going in from our side, from this industry perspective, in terms of training and developing our workforce to be not only trained on agentic systems, but actually to start getting comfortable with how we take advantage of building on top, because that's where the human workforce will be needed. So that's point number one. Point number two is if I look outside the IT services, in other words, the user community, within, again, globally, but again, looking at India as well, the main upskilling that's required is to actually first just understand, what it is that this technology can do, which again, we have the benefit since it's in our backyard, that a lot of the developments are happening. And therefore, when you look at the reimagined processes that I talked about earlier, what skill sets are required to play in those reimagined processes, which is not so much about technical skills on developing agentic AI systems, but on adapting to using the output from these systems. So it's the same as, I guess, when previous technologies come in, the internet came, you have mobile phones and so on, and you got using these new technologies to do what you used to do or learn to do different things. And that is where the focus will be for the user community. But I do want to come back to also the builder community. In other words, the opportunity at the India end, and again in the likes of WNS, where we have the opportunity to build the agentic AI systems and service the world. And that's where a lot of the technical upskilling is also required. So to learn to be able to play with agentic AI, model build, understand the technology, and more importantly, keep up with the fast evolution of this technology, which is happening in weeks and months rather than in years.
Definitely. And I think it really highlights how the future of work, I mean, it won't be just about learning new technologies, but also about nurturing the right human strengths to work alongside them. And, like everybody has its own concerns and skepticism around agentic AI, but I think it's not here to replace talent, but to elevate it. And that initially requires a mindset shift across the entire workforce. You have continuous learning, you have to be adaptable, and a cross-disciplinary collaboration. I think that all of these things will be very critical if you're not talking globally, but if India wants to stay competitive on a very global stage. And I think the big takeaway here is that while AI will, take over tasks, it's the uniquely human skills, the empathy, the creativity, the leadership that will define real success. So, well, thank you for sharing that, Gautam. Of course, when you're talking about, any new technologies, I think our conversation would be incomplete if we don't talk about the risks that usually come with it. I think agentic AI amplifies all the risks that apply to traditional AI, predictive AI, or generative AI, because greater agency means more autonomy and therefore less human interaction. Now, these risks must be addressed through both technological means and through human accountability for testing and outcome. I mean, a robust operational framework for governance and lifecycle management is definitely required. And with, agentic AI is advancing so quickly that organizations might have difficult finding precedents or best practices for minimizing harms. It has a potential to magnify the impact of biased data or algorithms. Organization must take the ethical lead and carefully develop an organizational governance framework alongside automated AI governance. So, what ethical, governance, or security challenges should leaders anticipate while scaling agentic AI in large enterprise environments?
Okay, great. It's a great question. And so let me give you a comprehensive answer here. So first of all, there's a lot of hype around agentic AI and everybody's trying to jump on the bandwagon. So the advice and the counsel that we give to our clients and is to basically look at prioritizing those use cases that have the greatest impact first, and let's get this thing tested and built before we start trying to implement it anywhere and everywhere. So that's point number one. At our end, we use a concept called AI plus HI. So I talked about productized services, and I talked about our heritage in domain richness and domain depth in understanding process and workflows. So the human for us is always going to be part of the loop. And the human in the loop is very important, in particular when it comes to agentic AI, because this technology has huge potential, but it does carry risk with it. And the human in the loop is very important to manage and govern that risk. The way we think about it is, and again, this is the counsel we provide to our clients as well. When you start with the use case, you look at the risk side of the use case as much as you look at the goal setting. So, and we typically would recommend and we counsel our clients to start with a lower risk. In other words, do not give the agentic system as much autonomy as its full potential is. So you start with less autonomy, so you therefore lower risk. The human in the loop and the ethical and the governance side of things and the regulatory side of things play a major role. And as the system proves itself and we are able to fine-tune it through the human side of things, you can provide more autonomy while ensuring that the controls control the risk, if you see what I mean. So it isn't a one size fits all. It isn't a end answer as one output. It should continuously evolve. It should start with low risk and you increase the autonomy or autonomous nature of the agentic ecosystem over time, and you still ensure there are controls to manage and regulate the risk related to that use case. So, let me take an example. Agentic AI systems have huge potential in medical or in the whole diagnostic side of things for what doctors do and what hospitals do. You don't want to be in a situation where some machine is deciding right up front and replacing a doctor, so to speak, or replacing the entire diagnostic process. So that's a good example and that will also vary from disease to disease. So, if you're looking at somebody's vitamin deficiency, perhaps more autonomy can be given to the machine. Whereas if you're looking at somebody's heart problems, you absolutely need to make sure there's a cardiovascular specialist that's providing the oversight beyond what the AI is coming up. So I'm just giving you some examples here. But the point I'm making is that the risk associated with the use case should define the level of autonomy given to the agentic AI system, and that should typically start small and increase over time as things get fine-tuned. There is also the ethical side of things, and that's almost even more important. There is high potential or risk for agentic AI systems or AI systems in general, especially as these advance over time, to go rogue. Because frankly, for a machine, ethics is as per the underlying data and the modeling that's been done. It isn't fine-tuned to the human ethical consideration. And therefore, the human in the loop, as well as building in appropriate controls within the agentic AI ecosystems, becomes highly, highly important. Again, all of this is done through a human in the loop concept, through use case specific thinking and risk controls, and evolving this over time.
Definitely, and you have clearly highlighted the real need for balance, between innovation and responsibility. And as and when we will be scaling our agentic AI efforts, I think it's about building a culture, an overall culture. I feel about accountability and resilience. And I think what you shared really underscores how leadership has to take a proactive stance in weaving ethics, governance, and security into the very fabric of AI adoption rather than treating them as afterthoughts. And I think it's very important because, responsible implementation often feels very less defined. And of course, each enterprise, its vision goals are different. And, it's not like a one size fits approach that we can take here. So that is something that you really, an important point that you mentioned. So looking ahead, one last question for you, Gautam, how do you envision India positioning itself as a global leader in the agentic AI era? And what steps do you think should industry leaders or policymakers, educators should take to accelerate this journey?
Okay, so I come back to what I said earlier as well. We have a very strong foundation in India because of our strong educational sort of ethos. Most of our education system builds strong mathematical skills early on and through your schooling, at the high school level. And then we've got very advanced training universities in the sciences and in the underlying areas for where agentic AI sort of skills get built. This is the right raw material. This is not ready and available talent. This is good raw material that India possesses. We have a very young population to add to that. On top of that, our industry, our specialization is in this space. We are the world's services backyard where a lot of this IT services industry is playing, and we are in the midst of the part of the corporate environment where agentic AI is going to play a big role. So we are definitely in pole position in India. And therefore, when it comes to what we need to do, so first of all, we need to separate those who are building the systems from those who are using the systems. Both need to adapt, and both have a role in India. So on the building side, as I mentioned, we have a very strong technical workforce. They have the right raw material, and the big players in our industry are already spending a lot of money to both train, skill, and upskill existing talent and new talent to the power of agentic AI and related capabilities. There is also the user community. And again, because we are a relatively young country, youth is to our advantage in terms of being ready to and adopt new technologies and become part of reimagined workflows. As you probably see around you, India is, social media is more adopted in India than elsewhere. Digital is more adopted in India amongst the youth and amongst the population than in other parts of the world, etc. So there is absolute reason to believe that we will remain at the forefront in adopting agentic AI and other related technologies, in particular because we are a young country. So, if I hope I'm answering your question, it's the two sides of the coin. One is the builders, where we are already in pole position and investing quite a lot, and the users, where we have a young and adaptive culture and country to be ready to adopt and adapt to what this brings.
Definitely, Gautam. And I feel as the world accelerate towards a digital first future, India is truly representing a thriving ecosystem and landscape to lead the charge with agentic AI. And as we move deeper into this age, we realize that this integration is not just enhancing how businesses operate, rather redefining where innovation happens. And with its deep talent pool, mature digital infrastructure, and future forward policy ecosystem, I think India has emerged as the world's digital transformation engine. So, thank you so much, Gautam, to take out the time and effort to be on a podcast today and helping us understand that agentic AI definitely represents a seismic shift in the way we think about technology. It's moving us from assistance to autonomy, from human led execution to a more human AI collaborated future. Thank you so much. It was lovely chatting with you, Gautam.
Yeah, good to contribute, Priya, and good to meet you as well.
Great. Thank you so much, Gautam. So, this is for our listeners. Thank you for tuning in to today's episode. I am Priya Dayalani, and I will see you next time with more insights into the technology shaping our world. You can view all our previous podcasts on Spotify and other leading platforms. Thank you so much.